everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co founder of Lean and Agile for Women, an organization founded on the premise to bring women in lean and agile spaces together so we can offer to each other and seek from each other in a psychologically safe space. And as part of this organization, there was an initiative that we launched last year, which is called LIA100 or Lean and Agile 100, where we are attempting to bring the stories of 100 incredible women among many women out there, 100 women as our first wave to you all and their narratives, their journeys, their trials, their triumphs, hopefully will inspire few of you, all of you. And even if one of you, comes out of this inspired, our effort is well worth it. So, as part of this effort, today we have two amazing women with us, Dr. Jen Frahm and Lena Ross. Welcome you both. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
It's a
having
pleasure
us.
to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Padmini.
Of course, our pleasure. So let me go ahead and briefly introduce you, and then we'll get right into the conversation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jen, Dr. Jen Frahm. She's the founder of the Agile Change Leadership Institute. She supports managers, executives, leaders in the new ways of working. Her professional experience includes change management, marketing, and communication roles within diverse array of industries and sectors. Her specialities include taming ambiguity, which we so much need in this COVID situation, change management, change communication, management communication, organizational communication, social media, organizational development, and problem solving. Thank you so much, Jen, for joining us again. We look
Yeah.
forward to having the conversation with you. And a little bit about Lena. Lena is the author of Hacking for Agile Change, where she explores how to build organizational and business agility by building agile capability in mindset, behaviors, and practices. She's fascinated with human behavior, the good, bad, and the downright ugly. I love that. I love that, Lena. Already can see where our conversation is
There's a
going.
dark side to everything.
And with over 2 decades of experience in how we are all hardwired to learn and change, Lena brings out the best in others, helping people arrive at their aha moment. She challenges audiences just enough to nudge them out of their comfort zone to enable breakthrough thinking and action. Also, Lena shares her expertise as a guest blogger on sites such as Lean Change Management, Future of Work Hub, and RealKM magazine. And she's the co founder, along with Jen, of the Agile Change Leadership Institute. Again, this institute offers certificate programs and Agile Change Leadership programs to develop change capability in Agile environments and several other resources. And Lena also has her own consulting practice called Change Hacks. Welcome you both again. And this will be a great conversation, I can already tell. So let's get started because I'm already excited about seeing you both co founding Agile Change Leadership Institute. And that's the story right there. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about first, right? Let's take 2 steps back and talk about what brought you into the agile ways of working and what brought you into this space. And then let's jump into how you both got together to kind of create something so phenomenal. Can we start with you, Jen?
Yeah, sure. So I was working in change roles in one of Australia's large banks, and the area that I was working in was known as a Kaizen shop. So they were very heavy use of Kaizen and Lean in everything that they did. So a lot of their change took the position of continuous improvement, perhaps more so than large scale change. But from that, I started to get this, I got a different toolkit with the work I was doing and being able to use lean tools in my change work based on having to adapt to the people around me and how they worked. And then the next couple of pieces of work that I picked up just happened to be ones that were embracing Agile as, you know, as an approach, or Agile as a method. I'm loath to say as a methodology because we know it's not a methodology, but they were using Agile to deliver software into enterprise, you know, delivery with organizations, and required change management as part of that. So again, you know, it was really getting your hands on the tools and saying, how do I adapt my change practice to reflect this new way of delivering services and products, when traditionally, you know, the last 10, 15 years of my work had very much been waterfall. So it was really that, oh, the environment has shifted, I need to shift too. And from there, I went to Agile Australia. One of, you know, it's an amazing conference in Australia. It's phenomenal. And I went there just to go, look, who are these Agile people? What are they doing? You know, I'm hearing this word. And as I sat in session after session, I went, hang on, that's my communication theory that I learned 20 years ago. Hang on, that's what we did in organizational development back 15 years ago. And I started connecting the dots between the work that has informed the domain of Agile with the stuff I've done in my history, and went, actually, this is a space that I'm really well suited to. I've actually got a background that's been doing these things for a very long time. My PhD looked at dialogue in change communication. So it was already looking at this concept of generative organizations. You know, how do we create continuous change through generative conversation? And so it was kind of, everything came together, and I went, oh, I think I'm working in the space of Agile change now. And along the way, you know, I'll let Lena speak to how she got into Agile, and then we'll share the story of how we split a bar tab.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's interesting because your epiphany around Agile is similar, but we arrived through different paths. I think the bank that Jen was working at is also the big bank that I was working at. So this is a little bit of a backstory, because while Jen and I were working on separate things at this bank, it was no surprise that our paths ended up joining up and meeting and starting there. But my role in this organisation was to build change capability, and we had a very big change practice there of about over 100 people, which was a mixture of permanent change practitioners and contract change practitioners. And I was asked around 2014 to start exploring how can our change practitioners become more agile. So as we had a few Agile coaches already in the organisation, because as Jen said, some projects were starting to start to dip the toes into Agile, I started to attend some of their sessions and have conversations with them. And the more I discovered about Agile, the more I discovered it was totally aligned with my mindset, my thinking, my thoughts around why are we producing so many artifacts in change when we may not need to. We need to right-size it. We need to take a more human-centered approach. I was starting to learn about design thinking. So it was like all these, I could start to see dots joining up. And like Jen said, I had also done a lot of study in my MBA and had worked with leaders in leadership development. And things like servant leadership and adaptive leadership and psychological safety were not entirely new concepts. But what Agile did is Agile legitimized them and made them okay to be a different type of leader and okay to talk about psychological safety, whereas once upon a time it might have even been regarded too soft and fuzzy to talk about feeling safe in the workplace. So the more I discovered about Agile, I think my epiphany was like Jen's, hey, this is like so me. I love this, and it's so much about the way I work and the way I think and how I think change should be delivered that I totally embraced it. And and felt that it gave permission for change people then to start to do change their way rather than a waterfall way, or the methodology says, you know, follow the dotted line. So that was very empowering.
I love what you said about the dotted line. I think
Yeah.
that's a very powerful metaphor. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll share how we came together and
Sure,
created
yeah.
the institute, because it's actually it's a funny story. Well, I think it's personally very funny. So Lena had left the bank. I was with a different client, and she reached out for, did you want to catch up for a coffee? And we didn't know each other very well at all. And so we caught up for a coffee at one of our local beach suburbs, and you know, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm working on a book. And she's like, oh, I'm working on a book. And she said, well, what's your book about? And I said, well, it's for managers, you know, leading change. And I said, what's your book about? And she said, well, it's about agile mindset and you know, business agility and how to create change in the workplace in a simple way. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I said, when are you finishing? And she gave a date. And I'm like, oh, that's when I'm finishing. And I'm like, okay, so we've got the same audience we're going to be selling to at the same time. And so I looked, I said, do you want to split a bar tab? Because maybe we could launch our books together so that we're not cannibalizing each other. It actually becomes this, you know, because I was like, I don't want Lena Ross as my competitor. I really don't. She's too good. And so we did a joint book launch of our books. And we really supported each other to get the books through to publishing and all of the pain of that. Out of that, one of the people who attended the book launch rang me and asked me to come in and pitch on doing a leadership development piece of work in the space of change and agility. And she said, oh, look, you should know that I'm approaching Lena Ross for this as well. And I was like, oh. And so I again, the same thought came through. I was like, I don't want to be Lena's competitor. So I said to this person who was speaking to me, I was like, would you like Lena and I to work on this together? And she was like, oh, that would be great. And so then I rang Lena and went, Lena, I really hope you don't mind, but I've just put us forward together. And look, that was, you know, that was the beginning of some really fruitful collaborations that Lena and I joined informally to do with some very, very big clients and some really, really exciting and impressive pieces of work. And we were just having so much fun together that we went, actually, we think we need to formalize this. It happened at the same time as I had a client that was asking me, he said, he was a senior executive, and he said, I feel like I need some certification in change. Should I do ProSci? And I was like, no, you should not. You're a leader. That's a practitioner-based certification. And I said, let me have a look at what's out there. And he said, oh, yeah, but I also need to get across this agile stuff. He said, should I do a Scrum Master? And I'm like, well, again, no, you're an executive and you're not delivering products in an agile, and this organization never would. You know, but he saw that was a future skill set that he needed. And I said, let me think about it and find some recommendations. And I couldn't find recommendations that bridged that space. Whereas I knew Lena and I had developed all of this learning material, micro-learning libraries around the, you know, we've got 18 topics that span agile change and leadership, that we could look at that, and we both have a background in academia and training and development, that it wouldn't take that much effort to create assessment programs out of it that had integrity and that were valuable. And so that was the beginning, that conversation with that client, and then let's formalize it. And it's been a beautiful collaboration ever since. And I think that, you know, this is when you first reached out to me, I said, look, I'd need to do it with Lena. And the reason for that is there is no Dr. Jen and Agile Change Leadership Institute. There is no Lena and the Agile Change Leadership. This is Jen and Lena is the Agile Change Leadership, the founders, right? But the magic is the two of us in collaboration.
I think that's really inspiring, Jen.
Because,
this is exactly what we strive to offer through Lean and Agile is, fundamentally collaboration. And, there is a quote that I recently started adding to my bio, which
Yep.
is, when women support each other, incredible things happen. You must have seen this quote many times.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we are seeing right now with both of you, right? It's as you, Jen, rightly said, you don't want Lena to be your competitor. Rather, you want her to be your collaborator, your support, your partner. And look at this, right? The outcome is something so powerful, and you're
Oh,
able to
it's been
serve the
amazing.
client much better. This is
I
great.
think we knew that there was a bit of mojo happening when Jen and I delivered, co-facilitated our first session with this very important client who'd attended our book launch. We're based in Melbourne, Australia, and the client had some participants in Sydney and asked if one of us could go to Sydney so we could co-deliver via teleconference. This is before Zoom was the thing, because we're going back about 3 years now. And after that session that we co-delivered, it was the first time we co-facilitated. We concluded and wrapped up, and the general manager of the area went up to Jen, because he was based in Melbourne, and he said, "Oh, you clearly do this all the time, the way you two work together and facilitate together." And then Jen called me up. I was in the cab on the way back to the airport to come home, and she said, "You wouldn't believe," she said, "they think we do this all the time, and it's the first time we've done it." So we knew then, we thought, "Oh, we've got something here. We've got to work with this."
Nice,
So that
nice.
was really
Because
cool.
you just know it, right?
Yeah.
When something is working out, you just know at the first instance. So I think, and then it's just so inspiring to, learn your stories. I want to go back to, so both of you are authors,
Yep.
right? Both of you have written books. Both of you have started this, institute together. Let's go back to writing the book. And, and I asked this to many of my interviewees, because it's an interesting thing that I want to bring out, which is, I talk to so many women, and all of them are brilliant, right? And some of them are extraordinarily brilliant, and they really want to share it through blogs or articles or white papers or books, but they stop themselves, right? It's similar to wanting to speak, and not able to speak. There's something that is withholding within themselves. It could be a self-talk, or it's I'm not good enough perception of themselves. It could be imposter syndrome. It could be anything. And I want to know from both of you. You must have experienced this in some capacity, maybe not in its entirety, but some kind of, can I do it? Will it go well? Am I doing the right thing, right pace? How did you overcome that? Because that message will really help several women out there who are watching this. Can you share, Lynette, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll kick off. I totally agree. I think it's a big leap. I think we're lucky with digital now and social media that's really changed the face of publishing. So you can start experimenting with your ideas in short blogs is a really great way to test the market, to test the thinking out there, to test if there's a gap. You can also test by the questions that people ask on social media what is missing. So then that helps you fill the gap. So that can start to build your confidence as to whether you're going to hit the mark with your content. So there's two there. There's one is you can find the gap and then test your thinking and ideas and your writing with short pieces through LinkedIn or blog pieces. LinkedIn is probably the best because it's the scariest too, because you're with your peers, right? You're really going into the arena with your peers, and you've got to trust that it's safe. And if it's not safe, you may get some comments you don't like, but they will all serve the purpose to nudge you maybe to think about something differently as well. So you can start to test, I think, before you go out full hog and write a book. And by also writing pieces, short pieces, you're starting to build content for your book. So then you don't have this onerous task of, oh my God, I've got to do 40 to 60,000 words. Where do I start? You've already pretty much got a scaffold, if you like, of your key ideas and your thoughts and putting it together.
Absolutely. No, that's a great advice, Lena, and I think that it's like starting at least one step ahead,
Yeah.
right? And building those, and then testing the waters, and then also being assertive about, yes, this might not be the right thing for a lifetime, but at least what the market wants for the long term, and then go with it. That's fantastic. Thanks, Lena. Jen, do you want to share?
Yeah, I'm not much help in this regard. And it's, I have, hand on heart, never in my life suffered imposter syndrome. And part of that is I come from a very incredibly supportive feminist family background. And so I was raised to believe I was capable of greatness and I should be doing great. Um, and that, when you have that conditioning as a family unit, so if anything, I struggle from megalomania syndrome, right? So mine is like, don't you know who I am, and why can't the world see my greatness yet? Because that's what I should be. And I say that part in jest. I think and it's problematic. It is still problematic, because there will be women out there who are like me in this regard, and it's problematic for three reasons. One, it can create a blind spot for women who are in need of support, because you sometimes lack empathy because you don't have those feelings, right? You can't identify with somebody feeling like an imposter. Two, it can result in an overconfidence bias. And so you get sloppy about doing due diligence or research on your ideas because you think your ideas are so awesome, that if I would buy this, if I would spend this on this, everybody else will do that. And I've had some really uncomfortable failures because of that overconfidence bias. So it is as limiting as imposter syndrome or anxiety about doing things. The third is, how that shows up for me is an innovation bias. So I often don't want to produce anything or create anything or write anything unless it is truly innovative and new and novel. We know first mover advantage really is, right? If you're the first out there with an idea, you're unlikely to make a lot of money out of it. It's second mover who makes the money out of it. So if you have an innovation bias, because you are overconfident and you get bored easily, then that can, you've actually got to stop and slow down and go, there is value in repeating something for a while. Not everything has to be new and novel. So I think when women come to me and talk to me about imposter syndrome, I think the greatest work we ever do, and as much as I've just told you I'm always overconfident, the greatest work we can ever do, regardless of what your mindset is on self-worth. And I still need to actively work in the space of I am worthy, that self-compassion.
Yeah.
The compassion for yourself is where it starts. If you can have compassion for yourself, you can sit with imposter syndrome, you can sit with megalomania syndrome, you can sit with anything there and know that you are worthy. And that's the foundation piece. Once you can really sit with I am worthy,
yeah,
I am lovable, everything else you can do.
I think you brought it home, Jen, right? You brought this point home by saying, I think it can be either way. And nobody has ever answered the other way, which is the overconfidence or, megalomania, as you mentioned, right? Yes, that is another dimension to it. But I think where I really resonated with what you said is, that self-compassion and identifying your self-worth and being aligned with that all the time will actually balance the imposter syndrome or megalomania or whatever it is, right? Because you're aligned with who you are. You'll improve if you need to. And you will go out there with your voice if you need to, because you just know your worth for whatever it's worth. So thank you both. I think you both shared really valuable insights in this context. And one more thing that I was actually thinking of when you both were talking about the Leadership Institute, right? And this is also Agile Change Leadership. And most recently, I was talking in a conference about women in Agile leadership and why it is important. Why don't we have enough of them? Now, is that the barriers they're creating for themselves, or are these structural barriers where, they're out of your control and context, but they're there, out there, invisible barriers, whatever it is, right? So in your experience, because as you both mentioned, you have this rich experience and background, both in academia and experience. So share with us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of, do you see, first of all, value in having more women in leadership? Second, what is the reality on the ground? Because you consult and you teach and you interact with so many people. Can you share with us a little bit about that? And either of you can start, whoever wants to take it up first.
Lena's making notes. That's my cue to speak.
You have a language now, right?
Yeah.
We both get on each other.
I think okay. So is it women creating barriers for themselves, or is it structural? I think it's a little bit of column A and a lot of column B. And again, over the years, Padmini, oh my goodness, I've shifted on this, right? So 20 years ago, I would have been a very strong liberal feminist going, it's about merit, and if women really want it, they can get it, and it's a good thing, it's glass ceiling, you can smash through glass, and you've only got yourself to blame if you're not at the top, right? That would have been 25-year-old Jen.
Right.
With wisdom and age, you come to terms, you get wiser, you understand about social structures and systemic change and the barriers that are there, and you understand about privilege. The other thing you can't see in a Zoom, I'm 6 foot tall, right? Wow. 6 foot women don't get ignored in the workplace. So, in terms of the extreme privilege that I own, my ability to determine whether a woman can get ahead or not because it's based on herself is really irrelevant. Again, I've got incredible biases in there, which, I've had to work pretty hard at looking at. And so it absolutely is systemic. No argument at all around gender equality in the workplace, let alone in the space of Agile, which is often dominated by technology, which we know that technology has a really, really significant problem with gendered thinking and behavior.
Yep.
So that said, in Australia, I don't see, and maybe it's the clients who select me, I don't see a significant gender imbalance. It is out there. The stats will tell you it is there, but the clients who work with me, who are perhaps forward thinking, who want to be doing continuous change, have already shifted in that space. There are already female EGMs. There are already females on the C-suite. There are, female board members. So I suspect, again, I have a very skewed view of it, because the type of companies who want me coming in as a consultant, the type of companies that are interested in developing agile change capability, have already recognized the power of diversity, the importance of females in the workplace. So I'm a problematic person to speak to about that. And it's given, I make people cranky. So I apologize to your viewers and your listeners who are sitting there and going, that's really unfair.
Well, that's actually a good point, because when you think about who approaches us for work, it may start with someone in human resources who will be typically female because that's skewed and they're being asked to start searching for someone. And then when it comes to, I'm reflecting, Jen, on one of our recent clients where there were two directors in a renewable energy company. One was male and one was female, and she was an engineer. And that was really refreshing and surprising to see, because when we were told, you know, you're going to meet with the two directors, we thought, oh, okay, one's a female in renewable energy, which is, you know, really all about engineering and that type of background. So we may have been we may have a skewed view on that because of the nature of our clientele.
Yeah, yeah. And I think both of you are spot on. And Jen, I think you should not apologize, because you talked about certain privileges sometimes women come with, you know, certain section of women. Not all women are at a disadvantage, right? There's a lot of there are several considerations. You know, it's cultural, it's
Yeah.
social, it's financial background, it's your education background, your experience, expertise. You know, women of color. There's just, you know, too many considerations here. So there is no blanket statement we could make. So I think, you know, I can totally you know, agree with what you're saying. Uh,
I just wanted, the statistics absolutely bear it out, and I just think, and I do recognize my white privilege, absolutely. And by virtue, you know, Padmini, an interesting little experiment, LinkedIn works with a lookalike algorithm. If you like this, then we'll suggest other people for you to follow. They're working off the color of the photos.
oh,
So yeah. So you actually have to be very intent. If you're a white professional woman, you have to be very intentional to go and find and follow women of color to diversify your social media feeds. So
wow.
that's a problem in tech, right? That's,
The
you
artificial
know,
intelligence, right? You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
it's need.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I'm glad I found you on my LinkedIn feed.
yeah,
Right, there's something that worked right on LinkedIn.
yeah.
So yeah,
So I think, you know, I think we've got to be mindful of that is happening from a recruiter perspective. If recruiters are on LinkedIn, they're
right.
not being shown, you know. So if we talk about tech recruiting and agile recruiting and things like that they're tools, and we know, again, there's all these case studies on white coding in recruitment and the issue there. So
Agree.
deviated away from gender, but it's the same kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up, right? I
Mm.
think, you know, the algorithms that we are working with also have a capacity to segregate us and
Yeah.
kind of push us to our own corners. So I think it's all the more a reason for us to reach out, reach over the fence, literally,
Yes.
Yeah.
and say, hey, you know, I'm here.
Mm.
Let's hack the algorithm.
Yeah, I wish I could.
That said, and I think this is the beauty of what you're doing with the spirals, is reaching out requires a level of trust.
Yeah.
There is risk attached to reaching out.
Yes.
So whether it be women reaching out to other women who are not like them, whether it be reaching out to other men, whether it's, you know,
Either way, yeah.
whichever way you go requires trust that there is, you know, that there is risk involved in this outreach.
Yeah.
And the beauty of doing things like your spiral programs is that you build that trust in little transactions and
Absolutely.
exchanges, you know,
Absolutely.
and that makes it easier to do. So, you know,
Yeah.
kudos to you. That's
Thank you.
making
Thank
it a
you.
lot easier.
And you know, this is possible only with, you know, supporters like you who can really vouch for us and vouch for the community, and we're all in this together, right? It's a community, you know, program. It's a community organization, and yeah, you know, everything that you said, you know, you both said is right on in terms of how this is being viewed in the organizations and the privileges and the underprivileges we have, and how we should really reach out. Because one of the things that I was talking to one of my mentees, was she was a little bit apprehensive to reach out to someone that I suggested she could. And I challenged her. I said, you'll be surprised at the number of yes you would get as opposed to the number of no's you would get when you reach out. You just have to trust, to your point, right? Trust that they will accept and say yes. And sometimes we imagine the other person to be larger than life. And for us.
Yeah, but also trust that when you receive a no, the no has been provided with, a positive intent. It's because the person is too busy or at capacity.
Right.
Not a personal rejection.
Right. And that's the worst that can happen, right? You're not losing anything by reaching out. And I think that's the trust we need to build in these women and all of us, that it's okay to ask, right? Just shed that layer.
Totally okay to ask.
You just don't know, who you're going to meet and who's going to be there. And recently I was watching television about some chef. It's a chef's program, and one of the chefs was very apprehensive to apply for internship at El Bulli, which is the most famous restaurant apparently in the world. But he took a shot and he said, why not? He wrote to them and they said, come on in. And this is an Indian chef who is a rising star who wants to apply. And apparently in the internship acceptance, they said, P.S., bring your spices. Because spices in India are very strong and they want to experiment, right? So you never know. Just ask. Just ask. So that was a very powerful story, I thought. But no, this is amazing. Thank you both so much. I think there's so much to learn, from both of you and your collaboration. I think we have the story right here. Thank you both so much. And before we wrap up, can both of you give us a message? It could be just a word, a sentence, a quote, anything that you really believe in, that drives you, propels you. Anything at all.
I know what Lena's is going to be.
Okay, about the mindset.
Well,
about the mindset. I think a very powerful message is, from me, is mindset is important, but mindset is not always fixed. You can actually nudge yourself out and bravely experiment and be curious. And that's where there's a lot of fun and learning and growth.
Yeah, that's the growth mindset. Thank you, Lena. That's powerful. Jen?
My word is grace. Lead with grace. Be intentional about working in grace. So the more we cultivate a state of grace, the better we can extend positive intent to others and positive intent to ourselves.
Love that.
What would grace do? That's my question.
What would grace do? Yeah. Wow, that was incredible. Thank you both so much. I'm so glad I found both of you, because this is the collaboration that we want to show more, and we want women to really reach out, collaborate, and just like Lena asked you, right? Jen, what are you doing? You asked her, can we collaborate? Hey, can we do this together? We don't want to be competitors. So this is a great story. Thank you so much, ladies, and I really wish you all the best. And
you too, Padmini. Thank you for the great work you're doing for Agile and women in Agile. It's really, really commendable. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.